literally within a half hour ago, Cordelia sort of messaged me a bit of, sharing about a situation that's sort of like repeating itself. And we just thought, it's not the right time to do well, firstly a show slot, secondly a show slot on PR, which we'll get into. And so we had to cancel Sarah last minute, and it's really fortunate that she's so graceful and also has some amazing insight to offer on the subject we are going to talk about instead. And also apologies to anyone who was looking forward to Sarah's show. Honestly, she's fabulous. I can't wait for Sarah to be on our guest, because she's just so cool. She's so full of amazing wisdom, a brilliant brand. She's just fabulous. And that being said as well, I think it's important we do Sarah some justice as well. So I have been partnered with Cordelia in Rebellious for a year, and I have been friends with her for seven years. And this last week was one of the hardest I've witnessed Cordelia experience, but we have got some light to shed as well. Some, there is elements of comic relief where it can be found, and some really important morals and messages to sort of share to everyone, which we were planning to do at a later stage. Like, we had sort of an idea of how to address this later, but it's important we talk about it now. So Cordelia, do you want to let us know what's happened?
Yeah, so I'm not going to go into too much detail. I also want to drop a disclaimer here for anyone that's this is quite a sad conversation that we're going to have today, and for people that are going through hard times or have experienced hard times recently, I just want to say that this is probably not going to be a very easy conversation for a number of reasons. But firstly, a week ago today, I found out that one of my close friends had passed away. Very unexpected. She was very, very young. And she was a close friend to me and a close friend to my children. What had happened, and the reason why we wanted to address this, even though it's such a personal matter, we had plans to really talk about, actually, at some point, how managing and going through grief and some of the really negative stuff that I've gone through and had to deal with in general since launching Rebellious Business, to keep the fires burning and keep going even through those times. We wanted to have a conversation about that because, life is a roller coaster, and we all experience the downs and the ups, and having to keep the fires burning can sometimes be really hard. But then after posting on social media photos of Priscilla with my children and, calling her baby girl, as I always did, I've had a lot of messages of people thinking that I've lost a child. And I haven't. I've lost a very dear friend who was very, very young and shouldn't have died. So it's all very, very sad. But I think that the sad part of that as well is the amount of love and support that I've received over the last week, but also from other people that have lost children and have been through that journey or are still on that journey. And so we wanted to address that because, yeah,
this is a different sort of tone today. It's a very, very challenging tone, and we wanted to address it today, last minute, because Cordelia has been inundated with messages of condolence for losing a child, and we were just like, well, how do we go on to, we can sort of address this, this can be addressed, but how do we go on to social media live and be cheerful and upbeat and rebellious, which was going to be a struggle anyway with Cordelia just grieving the loss of a friend. Firstly through the grief of a friend, but also if she's lost a child, it's just so inappropriate. Basically, we just were like, this is just such an inappropriate show to do, considering all of the background context. And so it was more important that we address the truth of the situation, which is awful and tragic, but also, it's not the loss. Cordelia's children are fine. Obviously sad because of the loss of their mum's friend who they've known for a long time. So that's the situation kind of addressed, and that's kind of what we're going through. Also for our clients, there's been the odd, Cordelia's not really been available this week, and that kind of brings us onto the topic that we were going to talk about in a few weeks' time. We were going to really work on this topic. She's had a week sort of off, and she's been unavailable, which has been quite right. And we want to talk about connection in that sense, which I think it's such a poignant and significant week to talk about connection. And I guess when we were working, I've been working on this subject as general, because we really care about connection within the Rebellious Business Network, with our members, with RIA, and we're encouraging connection so much. It's at the heart of business, and it's the heart of everything, and it's what we really encourage. And what's interesting is that I've seen this week, for the first time since joining Rebellious, and probably since knowing Cordelia, her have a week off and focusing on herself and disconnecting. And we thought that was a really significant thing to talk about, because sometimes connection is like about being connected to yourself. And it's, with the business, it has been so challenging. And it takes your all. It really does take everything out of you, and not in a bad way. Like sometimes it's very, very emotionally challenging and difficult, but also it's just your spirit in some ways. It's like really, really significant to you, and you just want it to succeed. So you throw your all into it, and you kind of negate your own needs. And this applies to everything. It's not just business. So I've seen Cordelia massively sacrifice her need for self-love since I've known her, and in this last year. And last week, it was quite a significant and special moment for us, because it felt like everything we were working towards has now, it had a bit of a payoff, which is, weird, because it's such a sad situation. But it was the opportunity for Cordelia to step back. And do you want to talk to us about that?
Yeah. And I think over the last few years since launching Rebellious, everything's been really fast, like 100 miles an hour. And, it's like that, isn't it? There's so much to do. There's big goals, we're all going for it all the time. And there have been times, like, for instance, this show, and there's that old saying, the show must go on. This show, I think I've missed one episode, and it was because the internet crashed. We just have never missed an episode. And I've been sometimes going through really, really hard stuff, like relationship stuff, or trauma, or family problems, or health problems, and have just kept the fire burning. And that has been at the detriment of myself a lot of the time. But it's that kind of want to just keep the ball rolling, and keep going, and keep strong, and keep showing up, even in the hardest of times. And I think what was so significant for me in this last week was that I was able to take that time off and just crash, And I think the thing that that made it so poignant was watching my friends, and how they still had to go to work, and they still had to just carry on. One of my friends has been incredibly busy. She's currently on a course. Like, she's also got 3 kids. Like, she's mental busy, and has just not been the headspace to just kind of stop and and look after yourself. And over this last week, it has been incredibly poignant that I've been able to just stop. And there's been no deadline, there's been no pressures, everything's been looked after. And it kind of feels like that's one of the things that I've always been being strived for, is being able to have that freedom to be able to we talk about designing your day, or like, being your own bank, or having the freedom to choose where you're going to be and when you're going to be where you're going to be. But that really was it. Like that was like the first time of like, whoa, like I really need to be over here right now. And historically, in doing that, there would have been a whole load of anxiety. But what about these people? And what about this program? And what about, this launch? And what about this? And what about that? But because we've got to a place where we're kind of like stable, I was just able to like take my eye off the fire, and the fire just kept burning. And that was really, really supportive. Like it really, really was. Hasn't always been that way. And I guess that the kind of lesson, or the value in that, is that the shift really changed when we started going for stable sustainability, rather than going for sales launches. We started going for stable, secure stability, like, and that was a real foundation that has enabled that kind of level of freedom in that way, if you know what I mean. And that, yeah, it's been I'm in so much gratitude for it,
So we don't have to go into too much detail. It's up to you, the level of detail you want to go to. But I do know of an experience where you conducted a business coaching call when you were in a really bad spot. You don't have to go into detail, but I just kind of want to. I just want to know how that made you feel. Like, what were you like? What was your thought? Like, what was your thought process at the time? Like having to make that sacrifice to yourself.
Yeah, I was in agony, emotionally and physically. And we'd launched a new program. We had like 12 people, these keen, eager people ready to start on the 10K boot camp. And we had the onboarding day for it. It was just like an hour-long call, really. But because, I don't really know. Like, I don't really know why I just keep going. Like, I'm not really sure. But I just dosed myself up on painkillers and just delivered it. And I think I collapsed afterwards. But I think there's a difference. It's like the goldfish chain, like the goldfish in the bowl analogy, isn't it? Like it grows to the size of the bowl. It's incredible how much pressure we can be under when we need to be.
I think it's incredible how much pressure you can go under. I'm much more like,
but that's the thing, isn't it? Because like I'm forced to be under a lot more pressure in general anyway, due to the fact that I've got kids and I'm a single mom, and like, there are certain responsibilities that I have that I just have to deal with. Like I can't just go, right, kids, you're gonna sleep outside tonight because I want a night off. Like, bye. There has to be that we cope with it's like, how, when I look back, how in the bloody name of Arthur Stone did I manage to deal with 3 kids under the age of 4? That was hard. That was so hard. And you know what? If someone tried to give me 3 kids under the age of 4 right now, I'd be like, no, I just don't think I can do it. I just don't. But at the time, I had to. I didn't have a choice. I had to. I was under that pressure. And I think it comes down to, and I'm working this out as I'm talking, it comes down to what's important to you. Like, what's really important to you? I think the reason why I carried on with that call when I was in absolute agony, I was emotionally distraught, and I carried on and I delivered that call and I got all those people onboarded, is because the business meant a lot to me. Looking after people, being able to do the thing that gives me fulfillment, being able to live out my purpose in that way, it holds a lot of weight in terms of why I do it and why it's important to me. And it's the same with bringing up my children, right? So, like, I think the whole Simon Sinek start with why thing, like, we have this conversation so many times. Like, it's very easy for all of us to meet our baseline needs when it comes to finances. The hard part is getting that extra bit, the 10K months that everyone talks about. That's the hard part, because my theory is you don't want it enough. There isn't enough meaning behind why that's important to you. Just isn't enough. Like, your baseline needs, yeah, there is, because you don't meet those, you're homeless. That means a lot to you. But in terms of that extra bit, without that soulful reason as to why you want it, that's connected to your very purpose of existence, like, it's just not going to make you fight for it. And so I think that's it. I was fighting for something that meant a lot for me. And it's easy to prioritize something else over yourself and your personal needs in that moment, if in the bigger picture, the importance of it is actually massively in alignment with supporting yourself. Does that make sense?
Yes, I can. I think I can see how I can see it also from personal experience. And I imagine a lot of people on the call who've worked with you one-to-one will very much recognize you in that situation, because you are you do very much care about clients. And sometimes I'm like, whoa, you need to make yourself a bit more of a priority there. Even still, and I think you do a much better job, but you are very, very, very invested in the clients and in the audience and in people in general. I think your nursing background is not surprising. Like, you are a natural born carer, except a lot of the times to your own detriment. So what's coming to my mind is a call in the summer when it shifted. And again, we don't have to go into detail. Maybe one day we will. But I just remember you just being like, I can't do it anymore. I can't do it anymore. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
So
yeah,
what shift?
Burned
Burned out. Yeah. That's definitely how I describe you. I was burned out. I'd only been doing it for 6 months. I'd been doing it for 6 months. I was like, oh man, I'm burned out. Do you want to talk to us about that? Again, you can share as much or as little detail in terms of the circumstances, but yeah, that call to me was quite pivotal that we had.
I'm generally like a very open book. Jennifer says I'm often too honest. So she's like, stop being so honest. Get yourself into trouble. No, so I mean, I think the thing is, like, I know that in terms of marketing and sales, we got no issues, right? I'm very good at that. So are you, Caroline. And like, it's why we do what we do, it's why we teach what we teach. But this whole kind of like thing about biting off more than you can chew and then being under an immense amount of pressure is a bit of a running theme in my life. Ian said, I don't know how one under 4 is hard enough, never mind 3. I do feel though that we're all a lot tougher and resilient than we think. And if you had to, you would. If you had triplets all of a sudden, you would cope. You just would. You don't feel like you could, but you would. But the thing is that like what I have made some big business mistakes, right? I'm not going to lie. Like, in terms of trying to scale a business, I've made some mistakes that I've learned from. And one of them was around sort of like building a team, and also expenses, and like being just too ambitious about what it is that we can add to the sort of outgoing sheet, So to tell you about the summer, I have to explain what happened in October 2021, which is the fact that we had loads of reserves in the bank. We were absolutely smashing it. It was great. And for the first time, and this is the last time I actually took a week off, was when me and Jennifer went on a all expenses paid trip by Rebellious Business to Barbados. And it felt like such an achievement because not only had the business paid for us to go to Barbados, but also I was able to take a week off because and Jennifer was able to take a week off. In fact, she was taking pictures of me on a sun lounger, not working, because she was like, well, I've never seen this before. This is very strange. I'm like sending them to Curls going, Mama, look, she's not working. I did have the laptop in a safe and I needed to get it out like on one occasion, and that was about it. But we were great. And so mistake number one, I brought on a new salesperson and I kind of went, oh, great, we'll just give that person all the sales calls. And unfair on the person that came on board because they had no training, because I just assumed, no, you're an experienced salesperson, you'll be fine, off you go. But then also got myself into a bit of a situation where it was now rude to take the sales calls back when there were no sales being made. And like I was just too nice, basically. And I just, so that was mistake number one. So slowly those reserves got eaten. And now we're in a paycheck to paycheck situation where we just got to get, the money in to pay the team at the end of the month. God knows how, but I never missed a payment. Like I might have been a couple of days late, 1 month or another month, but I never actually missed a payment. The rent was always paid. The team was always paid. Everything was always paid. But if you do that for 2 years and your outgoings are 15,000 a month, I promise you it will start to flip and eat away at your soul after about 18 months. And it was hard. Like it was really, really hard. So when Caroline came on board, it was a case of like, right, do we really need to be paying for this? This is like 1,500 a month. Do we need that? Like this team member, are they really contributing in a way that's improving the bottom line? Like, and so we had to have but for me, it was really challenging. I mean, even just letting that person from the sales team go in the end, like it broke my heart. Like I was so upset. Like it's so sad, like letting go of team members. And I think part of that's to do with the fact that I had this dream, like I wanted to have a team of 20. I wanted to get people out of these horrible jobs and I wanted to look after them. I'm a bit of a saver. So this is something I probably need to journal on. But yeah, so anyway, the paycheck to paycheck thing. And eventually I was just like, I just can't do it anymore. Like it got to the point where it was like there was too high a natural churn and too low a saturation point for us to get. I was just going and going and going and going, thinking we'd just get over the brow of the hill and then start building from there. But we actually needed to take a step back, recoup and rebuild. And yeah, that's what we did. And so we let all non-essential team members go. We removed all non-essential outgoings. We brought those outgoings down from 15 grand a month down to about 4, maybe more like 8, and recoup. And that last week with my friend passing and being able to just, be there for my other friends, being able to be there for whoever has needed. I think that's why that feels so sweet, is the fact that it was a real struggle to get to that point, It was, and for my own doing. It's all my fault.
Well, I don't really like the it's all my fault, but yeah, okay, I understand.
Self-inflicted pain.
Can you imagine? So I can literally look at you, and also I can say from hindsight as well, I felt very powerless in those moments where you were like, right, I've got to get 7 grand by Thursday, and it's now Monday, and it was very like,
I did it.
Yeah, you did, but it was very powerless for me to watch, and it was also like, it was just hard. It was like very hard to like, it was hard to watch you do that. And it was hard because I was like, I don't have the same, I don't have the same ability to do that, or I don't have the same context to understand necessarily. Like I didn't even I only recently understood what all of our strategies were because I was like finally able to like really get involved because we have that space. Like I felt very, very powerless. So that was like, you know, woe is me, make it about me for a second. But it was like really hard to watch. But aside from like, okay, yeah, it was, you know, I didn't like it. I didn't like seeing you go through that struggle, just like as much as I didn't like seeing you go through the heartache last week. And I also felt powerless myself. But what, like, can you imagine if it had been one of those weeks where it's like, oh, you know, we're up against a really significant deadline, like payroll is due in 3 days. And last week it was last week's tragedy had happened.
And here's where we come back to that thing. People saying, I don't know how you can do it with 3 kids under 4. I'd done it. I'd have done it because the needs would have been there, and I'd have had to meet them. And yeah, it would have been horrific thinking about it, you know, but it's because I'm coming from that space of, I don't need to do that right now. Like, I don't need to, like, we could, Caroline, we could like do minimal work until April and we'd be fine. You know, it's like, we're in a different space. It's great. But if I had to, yeah, I would, because what are the options? You know, the options are, what we lose a team member, what Jennifer doesn't get paid, what like the kids haven't got food on the table. You kind of prioritize like what has to be addressed. And as a mum, as a business owner, it might sound really self-sacrificial, but leaders eat last. Like, I have to put my needs last sometimes after everything else.
What would have, like, how do you think you would have coped?
It's impossible to say. I think it's that goldfish stretching to the size of the bowl. I would have put a mask on, I guess, and just suppressed it. It wouldn't have been easy. It's been really, really, really challenging, actually.
I know it's been really challenging. Oh, I just want to give you a cuddle. I'm sorry, I'm in Bali. Oh, are you okay?
Yeah.
No, but yeah. So having the time to, at least having the time off at least, has been important for you. Obviously, it's still not been very nice. Very nice, that's an understatement. Sorry, there's a dog barking in the background. I hope that's not being too disruptive.
I think it would be really, I know Sarah's open to talking about this, and I think the question, I think the thing that we're posing here is, how do you keep going when the going gets tough? And one of the answers is sometimes you just have to, but like, that's not really a strategy, is it? Like, that's just a grit your teeth and grin and bear it. Sarah's been going through some really, really horrendous times over the last year, unbelievably so. And I know that you said that you were open to having this conversation, Sarah. How do you feel about coming out and sharing? Yeah? Okay, let me just... Hey,
okay, so hiya. So I've sent you a private message. So I love you. You know, I sent it last week, whenever. There's a couple of insights. I have not said this in this group, and I was preparing myself to say it on the podcast, so I'm going to say it now. And there are clients that don't know about this. So there are a lot of clients that do, because one of the reasons I didn't talk about what I'm just about to say is because of my business and the way I thought I would be perceived. So it is sort of about PR. So a year ago, I was diagnosed with bowel cancer, and it was, I'd gone a very long time feeling fatigued, maybe 2 years through COVID. And I was sent down the wrong path, as usual, menopause path, exactly the same as Dame Deborah James. And I suffered the worst trauma I've ever had. I've actually got a film that I'm going to put up deliberately of me in trauma, so that because people talk about trauma, but you never actually necessarily see somebody in trauma. And no one's ever seen me ever in trauma because of the perception of what I do, and PR being the biggest thing. Anyway, 2 weeks later, I was called in, and I walked in, and the oncologist said to me, I was like, oh, have you called me in about the operation? She said, no, you look very fit. I've got some really bad news. And she told me that I'm stage 4 metastatic liver bowel cancer. And I started shaking with shock. I've had shock before, so I knew I was in shock. I couldn't write anything down. I'm feeling a bit nervous now because I'm starting to get remembered pain. And I walked out. Everything was a rush. I signed all the paperwork. I didn't read anything. I never took anything in. And she said, it's emergency. You're going on like a mass aggressive chemo. I didn't really know what that meant. And then a week later, I was having chemo, the most aggressive chemo. And I'd had the best run up to my business. And I literally I'll be honest, I billed nearly 40,000 in the first 2 months of chemo. And I had to execute it all. So I planned this post. And the one thing I would say, that when you're high profile, you have to be really careful what you write and how you write it, because everything gets picked up. And I couldn't answer any messages at that current time. So I spent ages writing this post. It took me ages, absolutely ages, because everybody was going to see it, but I didn't want people to see it all at different times. I didn't want them to find out in different stages. So I wrote this huge post, and I've got huge people on my network: Rod Liddell, Jessica Fellows, big journalists, a huge network of really high profile people. And I thought I was going to be judged by what was going to happen to me. So I posted it up, and I was absolutely deluged. It was 500 comments, and I know what Cordelia's been through, because it's so hard to deal with it, because you don't actually want to talk to anybody either. So I made a pact, and I got up every morning exactly the same time I always do. For the rest of this year, I've done exactly the same thing, and I answered every single person. It took me 4 weeks to go through it all, and gradually my side effects got worse. And I used to have key strategies. So I would just, if I was on a coaching call, I'd pause it. No one knows any of this. I'd pause it, and I would get underneath the desk. I'd spray my mouth because I don't have any saliva because of the chemo. I'd quickly dab my ulcers so they weren't hurting. I would try and sort my face out. I maybe put a little bit of lipstick on to make me look a bit better within about a minute. And then I'd come back up and say, I'm really sorry. Excuse me, I just had to sort something out with my plugs underneath my desk. And it was all me trying to manage. And I would say that human beings, knowing what I've been through and suffering grief every single day of my life since I've known, grieving for the life I might not have, and bearing in mind I'm on treatment, chemo all the time, and it's really been fantastic. I'm at 0, and I could stay at 0 for 10 years. It's just having the chemo all the time. I would just round up by saying, I know what it's like to be in constant trauma and grief and have to manage. I've got 2 adopted children, and one got pregnant while I was on chemo. She's a teenager. She's got learning difficulties, and now we've got a baby to deal with. And I just keeps on coming. The planet and God keeps on giving me these hurdles to get over. And I just keep getting over them. And unfortunately now I can't have a tattoo, because I was going to get Relentless Resilience tattooed all down my arm. And I can't. So you just have to imagine that I've got this tattoo all down my arm. And I didn't think I would get emotional saying that. And I'm emotional for Cordelia, because I know what it's like. My mum got a brain tumour in the middle of it all. So I know what it's like to feel like this all the time. And that's part of my story. And now everybody knows. And they didn't.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for sharing. Wow. What she also hasn't told you is how much she's achieved in the last year and a half. It's insane. She's written a book. She's planning a conference. She's just, and she's got a retreat coming up. I mean, just talk about flipping resilience. Like, it's unbelievable, Sarah. I'm so proud of you, and I'm so bloody honored to have you as a friend. You're amazing.
I'm pretty I'm pretty taken aback. We haven't like none, like this wasn't really planned, and it's quite amazing just to hear the stories. It's just I'm being relatively close to grief. I haven't been grieving myself. I have grieved before, but I'm not grieving at the moment, but have been very, very close to someone who's grieving. And it's been a real theme of my last 6 months, and potentially the next year for me. Actually, the last 18 months, someone else did this as well. So it's quite, it's kind of crazy that we're talking about this now. And I'm just, yeah, I'm very honored that I get to speak. Well, I get to share, Cordelia, like, firstly, like how amazing you've been doing over the last year. And I don't think you've been celebrated enough for that. And I'm so thrilled that you got to have this time to disconnect. And I just feel like blown away by Sarah, your story, and that your share. And I'm really grateful that we got to showcase you today, despite the fact it wasn't what we planned. And I love the big smile on your face and the laugh about how you're approaching things. And I do know as well that we have rebels, in our ranks that have really suffered this year and in the last year as well. Since I've been here, it's quite astronomical how much grief and pain is around us. It's just everywhere. And I'm glad we got to talk about it today. And I just want to
stop and acknowledge it, isn't it? Because it is very much, there is a real energy of the show must go on all the time. And yeah, I think it's important to stop and acknowledge it, not just for me or for Sarah, but just for everyone. Like, we're human at the end of the day. We all have shit going on that's just awful. I mean, the stories I hear, the things I hear from you guys, like, things that are going on behind the scenes, and you're just keeping this brave face and trying to get this dream rolling. And it's tough. It's really tough.
Yeah, business can be a bit of a respite sometimes. Yeah. In all its woes, it's still a nice escape sometimes. So yeah, it's just working with a lot of people, and I'm working with more people now than I've ever worked with, I guess, in a sense. And building relationships with people, you just realize, like, there is so much, like, everyone is going through something. Like, literally everyone is going through something. And when you work with people, like, closely, and who trust you to share with what's going on, you start to just think, oh, I would have never known. You just, unless we'd have had this conversation, I would have just presumed we were just bumblingly happy and going through life without a care in the world. And I think, aside from business, like, just, everyone is going through stuff. That's kind of my,
yeah, defo. And it's, social media is a highlight reel, isn't it? Like, everything's a highlight reel. And this is why, like, I'm always saying to our coaches in Rebellious, it's like, you have no idea. You think you don't have people in your audience that need you, that need what you do, that need your support, that need your coaching, that need that hand holding, that hug, that figuring out how to deal with this mess that is in my head right now. But they're not outwardly sharing that, it's in the content that you put out there and the feelers that you put out there and the way that you show up that people will get support in hearing your words, get support in hearing your expertise and what you have to say. Don't ever make assumptions, which is easier said than done. Because we need to make assumptions to know that we are safe, because otherwise the world, we question everything. But yeah, it's interesting what Sarah said about being careful about what you say when you're high profile. I mean, I don't consider myself as someone who is high profile. I consider my future self as someone who is high profile. Right now, we've got a cozy audience, and it's a beautiful one. And I love that. The soul destroying part was in how, the realization that I'd made a mistake in how I worded things. And there's two sides to it, right? Because for the people that know me and the people that know my friend, or the people that know, and the people that would read the full post would have gathered that, well, actually, she's lost a friend. But the first two lines said, "My heart is broken, my baby girl." And I always used to say to her, "I love you, baby girl." And she would say to me, "I love you, my darling." And so it's very easy for me to just write that about her. It was only after I received those messages that I was like, oh no, oh shit. It was like, and do you know what? Priscilla, my friend, she would have giggled. She would have really laughed at that. She would say, "Oh, Corky, you silly Billy." But it was also just really, really like harrowing to think that half of our audience now thinks that I've lost a child. We had to come out and address this. I mean, Caroline thought it was really funny. So that's where the comedy, because there is a part of it that's really funny, but then there's another part of it that's like, no, but there's also, it's a trigger for other people that are going through grief. Like this is awful as well. The funny part for me was that Priscilla would have found it really funny, right? She would have been like, but there is a funny side to it, but it's the embarrassment is the funny side to it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I do want to clarify that. I do want to clarify that. I didn't think that it was funny in that sense, but it's just like, oh no,
Yeah.
like, oh no.
Oh
and
no.
then
exactly. Like, it's so awful. Yeah. It's sort of funny at the same time. It's horrendous.
It was also, you were second guessing whether to put the post up or not. And I was like, just do it. It's fine. Like, what's the worst that can happen? And then it's like, oh no. Oh dear.
Oh, no. Oh God.
Oh no.
Oh shit.
And it's just so unexpected as well. It's just so like, oh, this is not what we could have predicted would have happened.
But,
yeah. And I do think.
Go on.
Well, I met Priscilla, and I also, I had a very similar experience. I lost a friend a couple of years ago, and actually at her funeral, there was a situation that happened. And I remember thinking like she would have found that so funny. And so the circumstances itself were not great, but I was like, I'm just going to embrace the spirit of my friend, just find the humor in this. And I'd met Priscilla, and I was like, she'd find it's endearing and sweet. And then, oh no, it's a bit of a calamity, Jane. Like, oh no, now I have to resolve this.
Typical clumsy Cordelia. That's
yeah. It's very hard. So yeah, it wasn't. I didn't find it funny in the sense like, because it's obviously really upsetting, and loads of people who know you were like, oh, like, but then it was just like, right, we have to fix this. I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, like, and Sarah, I mean, the other irony is that this session was about, how to become high profile and public relations and stuff. Like, I mean, it's a wake-up call as well as to like how you do have to be careful about what you say on social media, as you said already. Like, in my head at the time, there was no way that would be misconstrued, but I just obviously wasn't in my right frame of mind. When I looked back at the post, I was like, oh, like, oh no.
So I've had Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
I've had to sort out global trolling, UK Daily Mail, 2000 thread comments to a piece for clients who have accidentally said one thing wrong. It can be a sentence. And all I would, even I've had hate mail. Okay. I don't know who it was from. The police were involved. So I've been targeted myself. And I don't want to make this negative because it's really important to be, it's so important to be high profile if you want to be successful. What you have to be able to do, and my job has been for them to be like a bodyguard, like I was for Anita Roddick. So first off, I would always say, and people may argue with this, it's really important to be authentic. However, you need to be a little bit careful about how authentic you are. And so when I wrote my stage 4, everybody needs to know, I've had a death. They've given me a death thing at the moment, and I have to go through chemo for 6 months before I even know if I'm going to stay alive, because I was so ill. I think I was months away from dying. And you have to be very, very particular about some of the words you use, because by accident now as well, you can get involved in a whole diversity argument just by accident. It is a minefield, but that should never stop you being high profile. And what Gordon Roddick always used to say to me about Anita, he used to say, let her say all over the world whatever she wants and go along with a dustpan and brush after her for the stuff she gets wrong. And it's almost like nothing will ever kill you from bad comments. You've just got to harden up a bit and accept that some people are going to hate you. I've had awful comments on my ads. I've had wonderful comments. And what goes on in life is you get the real awfulness where you are so low and dark. You can't explain it to anybody. I couldn't explain how the way I explained it as I was crawling along the carpet with my fingernails dragging me. That's how bad I felt. But the highs, I love Wednesdays. I love being in Rebellious because it's a group of people that understand the roller coaster of it. But you can't have the highs without having some lows, and you have to lean into the lows. I always say to people, you lean into it. And if I can be there by the side of somebody and help them lean into it, then I do. And as you know, I'm a Christian as well. So it is about giving always and not taking. And that is my mantra. So I don't know if that's any help at all, but yeah, just remember that I don't want you to be so uptight about what you're doing that you won't do it. But you just need to think the more high profile you are. And a lot of people in here are quite high profile already, just from the fact they've got communities. And those communities know people. And it only takes a couple of forwards for it to go viral, if you see what I mean. So remember, people know people who know people who know people. But if anybody has anything they can't deal with to do with that, just contact me, because I'm a crisis expert. I work globally. I worked on Delfor. I worked against a batcher in Nigeria. I've worked globally. I've worked on murder, which I don't want to talk about. So if anybody has anything that's slightly serious going on that they're worried about, they just need to ask me and I'll tell them how to handle it.
Thank you.
Oh, God. It always sounds so serious. It is, and it's fantastic. Being high profile is fantastic as well. And I'm proof that you can be ill all the time. I had to come to terms with the fact that I am permanently ill. That was one of the biggest awful things for me. I'm an Iron Man. And now I can swim a little bit.
You love swimming as well. Flipping pictures of you on social media every 5 minutes in a little wetsuit going for a sea dip. Thank you.
Oh.
Thank you for sharing. Do you know what? I also I think there's also another thing, and let me know your thoughts on this. I have to click the ask to unmute, Sarah, because we've got it on the mute thing. Do you feel that, let's say someone who is a bit high profile and has a bit of an audience, there's this sort of like there's this natural kind of pedestal thing, isn't there? Where people put people on pedestals and in doing so kind of expect that person to be an expert in everything, or to know how to handle everything, or, you know, like,
Yeah.
how do you manage that?
Okay, so first of all, you've got to accept that, because that was the whole point. If you want to be a global thought leader in a subject matter, whether it's being a zoo expert, I've got a client who's a zoo woman, zoo vet, through to me on PR, you've got to accept that you have to keep learning and keep on the journey of being the expert, right? So that, and I read all the time. So I read and watch all the time, every single minute of the day. I'm either the news, whatever, on top of what is going on, and an early adopter. So I'm always looking at new stuff. So you can deliver that consultancy at that level. Obviously that is hard work, because sometimes you just want to be little old me crawling along the carpet with my fingernails and nobody knows. And there is this huge pressure to give a perception of sophistication, of consultancy, and that you know what you're talking about because you've got their life in your hands, especially with someone, you know, if I'm dealing with something serious. So how did I used to deal with it? By going for a 2K swim, a 3-mile swim in Lake Windermere. Now I go for a 15. I've just about got on the wide walk bike, and I do a 15-minute walk bike with no intensity, because I can't cycle properly.
Yeah.
But I still do it. You know, I still do it. It may be a completely different level, but I still do it. So you've got to keep grounding yourself and going out and being in the countryside or whatever and thinking, I'm just little old me in the universe. And then the next day you can be the global guru Yoda that you want to be.
Mm.
You just got to take time out.
Yeah, I think the thing, do you know, like, we are always learning, we are always growing. It's like, this is my first real kind of grieving experience, and I am so fortunate at the ripe age of 33 to be saying that. I lost my granny when I was 9, but like, I haven't lost anyone really. My granny was 94. Definitely never lost anyone young, you know, like that. And so I think in those moments where, like, the nuance or the circumstances in which in which you are finding yourself as a leader in that way, kind of throw you into a bit of like feeling like a newborn baby again.
Yeah.
Like, you know,
yeah.
Like feeling like you just so kind of like vulnerable, and so like, I don't know, like well, I can't find the word, like naive. It's like, and it's, yeah, I mean, it's interesting. It's been really a beautiful and fascinating journey at the same time. I mean, we're only a week in, but it's like there's so much growth and there's so much to learn, not just about myself, but about life. Because I think when something like that happens, I certainly felt like I just kind of like lost the point or the meaning of like the world and life, and it like threw everything for me. And it's all so new and so fresh, and then to kind of like show up and to be.
I think the one thing I would say to that is you are in the learning bit of what it's like to have loss. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it's a new thing, and now you're experiencing it. So I thought I was invincible. You know, I'm in my 50s and I'm doing Ironman, and I'm like, you know, I'm just carrying on in my life, being totally invincible. Not present, just going from one thing to the next, making millions, blah, blah, blah. And then I was ill, and I was able to sit with 40 people, 80 people a day having chemo. And it is a massive reality check, because the week before I said, I'm never going to keep coming to the hospital. That's not me. Oh my gosh, if I had to come to the hospital all the time, I'd be so like devastated. The next week, I'm in hospital nearly every day for 6 months. And I couldn't believe it. But I felt like it was a sign for me to have a reality check on the rest of the population that are unseen and struggling. And Stu, who I had an unbelievable meeting with, who deals with people that have gone through addiction, I never even took the time to, maybe see these people. And now I'm seeing them all the time. And I'm so glad that I was given the opportunity to open my, Claudia's just said it, open my eyes to it all. So I thank God for that, even though I'm not in a very good place.
I love your spirit.
But I can still laugh hysterically like a drain.
Which is the best form of medicine ever, anyway. Oh, well, thanks, guys, for being here with us, and sorry for bringing the sadness today, but like, it's just beautiful having this community. Like, it's just so lovely that we can come together and talk about tough times as well as good times. And I know that so many of you are going through hard times, or have recently been through hard times, or just being able to see the light again after seriously tough times. And I just want to give you all a big hug. Keep going, you're amazing. And I think I love this. We're all having a hug. Come on, join in, everyone. Big hug. I think that the real kind of main thing that I've taken from this conversation is have a reason that you're fiercely passionate about. Because if you've got a reason that you're fiercely passionate about, it'll keep you going through the darkest of days. And we all have them. But we also have great days too.
So also have space for yourself. And also everyone, also have space for yourself. We mustn't forget that, Cordelia. We need space for ourselves, and also everyone's going through shit. Basically everyone. That's my experience.
Not everyone right now, but everyone at some point, generally. But
maybe, well, okay.
So Sarah, we're going to reschedule this session. We're going to have a Sarah show. And do this properly, because I've been chomping at the bit. I mean, we had Sarah booked in since what was it, August 2023 or something, like, for God's sake. But we had to stop and have this conversation. Sarah, you've been so graceful and so beautiful in how you've shared and allowed us to create this space with you. So thank you so much for that. But yeah, Jennifer, delegating that to you, my baby girl. Let's get Sarah in ASAP. Just bump anyone. No, I'm joking, don't. But yeah, let's get Sarah in ASAP when she's got some time and we've got some time. Bump me or Caroline at any point for it. Cool. I think that's it, Caroline. Do you want to close this out?
Yeah. Thank you guys for joining us. Sorry for any inconvenience caused in terms of changing the schedule, and also if this has been difficult to hear, we're really sorry. I think it's very important for us to talk about real things as well as marketing and stuff. Like we are trying to take the show in some new directions, which are I think we're trying new things, and it was an interesting opportunity as well as a necessity today. And I've looked at the Facebook as well. We've had quite a few people watching live. Sorry for the non-planned, sorry for the tough subject. Thank you all for sharing all your comments and just so much love been shared in the chat. I'm so grateful. Thanks, Cordelia, for being really open and sharing about the tough times. So thank you for everything.
Thank you. Lots of love, guys.
My pleasure.